Good afternoon. What you are viewing is sap gathering lines at the home of the White Sugarhouse. We are out in the orchard. They refer to it as an orchard. As you can see, the trees are tapped, and the smaller lines flow into the large line, which you are viewing here, this white line, and it flows down to the sugar house where it will go into a vat, and then from there we will see the process by where the tree sap from sugar maples is boiled down to get maple syrup. This is one of the many trees that are tapped. This is the tap that goes into the tree. We will see in a little bit how these are made. This is a maple tree. Now from this line here, when it runs, which is when the days are warm, it flows down through the smaller line into a larger line, and eventually into the holding tank in the sugar shack. As you can see, there are many trees that are tapped because it takes a tremendous amount of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. We have another example. Here's another tree that's tapped. This is the so-called modern way to gather sap. In years past, each individual tree would have a bucket hanging from a spigot for the sap to flow into, and then the person who is gathering it would come along with a team of horses and a large vat on a drawn sleigh and dump the contents of the pail into that vat and move from tree to tree. In later times, they might have used tractors. This is a very large orchard. Very peaceful and serene here. Occasionally a large woodpecker in the background, but other than that, no noise. We have had snowfall in the past 2 days of 8 or 9 inches. This is the line that will flow down to the tank at the bottom of the hill. And now we will go down and view the operation from at the hill. As you can see, the land where the trees are tapped and the sap is flowing has recently been cut. The purpose of the cut is to be a selective cut and allow the trees to gather more sunlight, and their growth will progress much better. More sunlight. This is what is called a selective cut. Looks very nice. In a few weeks all the leaves will be out and it will look like nothing has been cut. What you're viewing at this time is steam from the sugar house where they're boiling off the sap. As you can see, the evaporator is wood-fired, which is out of this chimney here, and the vapor is from the evaporator, the steam from the boiling of the sap to make it maple syrup. This is what's known as a sugar house. This is the home of White Sugar House. Location, Man's Hill, Littleton, New Hampshire. This is some of the wood that will be used in next year's boiling. It takes a tremendous amount of wood, as you'll see, to keep the temperature up in the evaporator in order to boil the sap down into maple syrup. Here we have our line carrying the sap into the maple sugar house, and when we go inside we will see that it goes into a large holding vat, and then from there it's drawn into the evaporator. This is the maple sugaring shack. And you can see at the top is where it releases the steam. Here we have a shed, the wood they need, tractor to gather their wood. As I stand here, I can smell the sweet aroma from the sap that's been turned into maple syrup.
And will that trip it?
We're inside now. This is the evaporator. We have Mr. Bert Ingerson here. Good afternoon, Bert.
Afternoon, George.
I wonder if you might explain to the people what is happening here, if you would.
Well, we're ready to take the batch off, and I'm watching the apron when it gets thick enough. And we also take it off with a thermometer. The syrup is 7.5 degrees above the boiling point of water. When it reaches that point, we have to take it off in a bucket.
This is the storage vat in here. We have a pump. The sap comes in from outside. You can see a line here. This is the vat where the sap is stored. There is the sap running right there. It'd be hard to hear me over the motor. Pump. And this is Mrs. White.
Hey, George.
Mrs. White is the owner of the White Sugar House. We are going to see what they call fire, which is taking off the maple syrup. Is that correct?
No, we're going to fire the boiler now,
Okay.
so we can take off in a
All right, let's go show the folks. Bert is firing the evaporator. Is that what you call it, folks? Right? As you can see, that's very, very hot.
Takes a lot of teamwork. Try and get it fired as quickly as we can so that doesn't cool the sap down.
Looks like this operation requires a lot of teamwork to keep things going in order to make a quality product, which they do here.
The black smoke, but today you can't see it too well through the steam.
Would you explain to us, Faye, if I may call you Faye, what we're looking at?
Well, if you can see in the center, you've got your pipe comes up from the ash through the steam that's evaporating from the sap. You can see the black smoke coming up. Usually that happens right after you fire, and then it'll die down and won't be quite so black after a few minutes. Steam's kind of hiding it today. And the air's just right. You can see it go right straight up in the air. Oftentimes we have airplanes fly over. I don't know whether they're just flying over to check whether there's a fire or just to see if we're boiling, but it's quite a sight from up there, I guess. We aren't quite ready to take off another batch yet, but hopefully we'll be soon. Did you get up and see all the lines up there?
Yes, I did. Could you explain to the folks the process that takes place before the sap starts running, with all the lines that are put out and...
Well, we've got a gas tapper. There is a hole in this tree. I haven't put a bucket in it this year. Usually I put a bucket in it just to let people look at it. But just drill a hole, we pound in a tap. Did you see a picture up there of how it goes from the tree into the pipeline?
Yes.
And then it all comes down gravity, feeds through this big tube, goes around and feeds right into the storage tank area. It's a closed system. Once it's in, and the ends are capped off, it's completely closed. And once it runs in there, and then we hitch it up to a sap sucker. And we've got the sap sucker on a time clock. It's on at 10 in the morning and off at 7 at night, unless we're here and we need to change it. And it pulls all that sap that won't come through right into the storage tanks.
It's certainly different than you used to do it, is that correct?
Yes. Collecting, it would be impossible to collect with buckets up. We can't even get up there sometimes without ski poles to help us get up. It's so steep, so we have to use pipeline. But it's a nice clean system. There's no millers, no leaves, no anything off the trees to fall in, so it's completely clear when it gets here.
Could you give us a brief description of what transpired prior to putting up all these lines, how you gathered the sap in years past before you came up with this system?
Well, before that, it was basically all by bucket. You put your sap bucket on, and you had big gathering pails. Just put in as much as you could and go from tree to tree and all haul it down. There used to be a storage tank set up there. We'd dump into a storage tank and pipe it by old galvanized pipeline right into the tanks in here. Anyone now that sugars on flat going, they still can do it either with a tractor such as mine or even horses. And they've got a big dray and they put a big storage tank on the back, gathering tank, and haul it in and dump it. But this way is a lot easier.
And these trees, what would be the correct name of these trees here?
These are rock maples.
Rock maples, and they produce maple sap, which is in turn boiled down to maple sugar, right?
Correct.
Or maple syrup.
Maple syrup. Basically, you're supposed to average is 40 gallons of sap makes a gallon of syrup. We've gone both ways. This year, our sap at the new orchard we tapped this year is much sweeter than the old one. We were tapping way up, well, it's a mountain beyond the one that you can see up the hill there. And the sugar content in that was 1.6. This has been anywhere from 2.2 up to 2.9, which is sweet for sap. So we've had a good deal. We've made 100 and some odd gallons this year.
Wonderful.
And we're hoping for another couple more good runs and like to make 200 gallons.
Now what constitutes a run, if you might explain that?
Well, if the weather gets down to about 20 degrees at night, the sun comes out, and it's up near 40 the next day, we would have a good run.
So you depend on Mother Nature.
We sure do, unfortunately.
So you look to the weatherman a lot to know whether you're going to work all night in the sugar house.
Sure do. I expected when I came up this morning, it was running full pipe, or late this morning. And then the sun went in, and it is still running some, but not running good.
With all your and Bert's labors, you can hardly call this a living. You must be, this is
Oh,
like
no,
a
no.
hobby to you, isn't it?
It is, but hopefully we'll get to the point where it'll start making us some money, and it'll pay for everything that we use here anyways, and a little bit besides. There's a lot of work gone into it. This year, I didn't go up on the mountain and help so much. We hired some help, and that set us back a little bit.
I was showing the people where you had some logging done, and I hope I explained it correctly, that it was selective cutting in order for allow growth of your present trees. Is that correct?
That's correct. It was basically white birch, and it was so filled in with white birch that we didn't even try and use the maples. We had to open up the maple orchard, and that's the reason we had it done.
So in future years, you'll be able to tap many more trees. Is that correct?
We had a forester up here, and he went over and looked through the area, and he said we had a minimum of 4,000 taps we could put up if we wanted to. We've got about 1,000 this year, and that's about all we can handle with this arch we've got in here.
Okay.
It'll supposedly take care of 1,300 taps.
Wait! Don't do that! Look at it!
Bert is getting his wood ready for his next firing. This is probably the easy part compared to the original gathering of that, isn't it, Bert?
Sure is.
Watch it.
We're back inside. What are we looking at here, Faye?
Well, this is all you can see there is the foam from the front pan that's making the syrup. And it's
And I see you have a temperature gauge, right? If I can just
Right,
lean
this-
on it. There we
have
are.
a temperature gauge on each side. Today, we're not taking off from this side. This is where the sap is coming in today. And he's taking the syrup off on the other side. We reverse flows every day to eliminate sugar sand as much as we can. There is a plug in the back of this pan where the sap comes in, and we reverse sides on that daily. Where the sap.
This is the side that Faye was referring to, where Bert will draw off. Bert's keen eye and many, many years of experience will guide him. This pan I'm looking in the rear, is that called a pan or is that an evaporator, Bert?
That's it's all part of the evaporator, and that's the pan that the sap comes into.
Okay, which would be in on the copper. Am I looking at the right thing? The copper line is where the sap is coming in
Yes,
to the pan. And that's all stainless steel, is that correct?
that's right.
And that has different compartments as it boils down.
That's right. It comes in as plain sap, and it comes down to the end of the pan and feeds itself back up and down the other side. It's a divider in the sap pan. And then it comes into the syrup pan. It comes in on one side, and then there's 4 compartments, and it goes through each compartment, and it evaporates down till it gets to the last compartment. Is where you take it off the syrup.
We are here. Faye is going to can some syrup. Those white claws are filters. It's all filtered. Now all your containers are done by hand, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now how long do you wait before you start canning after you dump it into the
As
container?
soon as it's filtered through, we start canning right up.
So that's warm syrup.
Should be canned at 185 degrees. If it gets too cold, you have to reheat it to 185 degrees.
So there's really, excuse me.
Once the can gets full, like this one almost is, they do what they call, I don't know if you can see it, but you burp it. And that fills the air, fills this pocket of air in there with syrup. I had already done it. Perhaps I can show you again. And then there's no air in there And it's sealed tightly. Oh, hope you didn't get nothing on it. I'm sure you want
So you
this.
really don't have much time in between the time you take your syrup off and put it through your filters and strain it to can it.
Oftentimes it's still filtering through as I'm canning it up. As we take off a batch of syrup, then we will remove one of these filters. We have the heavy filter underneath. And then these are just filtered papers that we keep taking off. And as the sugar sand gets in there, we take it off, and then you've got another clean one underneath. After I burp it, I add a little more syrup to make sure the can is good and full. Just put your seal in. Good and tight.
Now, is that a quart-sized container there, Faye?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
These little ones that you see in front here are pipes, and I've got half gallons and gallon cans there. I did put up today one tab to be called medium. We have a grading kit that must be used. We have an empty bottle in the middle that we fill with syrup, and then we have to compare it to these different. We've got grade A, fancy, medium, dark, and grade D.
Now, who regulates the grading? Who supplies you with those
Well, we buy
containers?
this.
That is a kit,
That's a kit we buy.
which is a standard
It's a
grading
standard kit.
system.
Right. And this one happens to be a Vermont one. It's a temporary one, and it only lasts for so long. You can buy permanent ones, but we have a temporary one.
So you are regulated as to your grading.
Correct, and that's from the Department of Agriculture, the state of New Hampshire. And they do check on it, and usually they come visit once a year, and they can go around to any place that you sell your syrup and open can, container, whatever, and check on it.
Are there different prices for different grades?
Usually there are. We don't vary much in ours. It's all grade A, but there is light, medium, and dark. We haven't made any light this year. It's close, but it's not quite up to it. I'll put a little in this jar and show you. Looks fairly light. Put it in your kit. And see, there is a difference. It's pretty hard to get it just right. This is the medium, and you can see it's lighter than that. But it's pretty close to fancy, but it's not quite enough to call it fancy. So we have to go the next grade down, which would be medium.
Now, would there be a different taste in your different grades, Faye?
As the darker it is, the more maple flavor there is in it. The fancy that some people like there's not a lot of flavor to it. In the last couple of years, we've noticed people have gone more to medium or dark. In fact, I think they prefer dark over medium.
Because of flavor?
Because of flavor. And it's all, as I say, it's all grade A and it's all nice and clear, but it has a little more flavor to it.
Bird is putting in some syrup, just taken off. To be filtered.
Put a cover on, keep it good and hot. Let that run through before we can up some more. Now, if you can see,
This is called an arch, is that correct?
the bottom part is called an arch.
The bottom part is called an arch.
Now these are of course the sap pans we were boiling in. This top section here is called the preheater. And the sap will come in, it runs in gravity from the tank, and it goes in, unless we want to bypass it, it goes in here. There are stainless steel tubes in there, copper tubing in there, runs through, so that when it actually does go into the back pan to start boiling, it's already preheated. And that gives us, it's got channels in there, the water, condensation runs off into the bucket, so we can use that hot water for cleanup around. We do have the openings in the roof to let the steam out, which you have to have if you want to see in here anyway. Get that, and I'll have to put it back too because it's good syrup.
This is one of the old buckets that they used to use before the modern plastic lines. I don't know if you can see it, but this is one of the taps, the old style taps. Maybe I can just hold that up for you. This is the old style tap right here. Faye has just put a cover on. This is how they used to do it.
This cover is made so it goes right through this hole. So it'll hold.
There we go.
There. So that you can just flip this up and take the bucket off and empty it and put it back on without losing your cover on the ground each time.
What we're viewing now is Faye's modern way to tap the tree.
Snaps right off. Just for this.
Faye has a hole in the tree. She's just putting the tap in.
Bucket hangs on the little hook.
Tap is in the tree.
And the cover goes through to protect it from any rain or snow or anything that might come down, fallen branch or anything.
This is the way it used to be done. Is that right, Faye?
That's correct.
You still have to drill the holes in the trees
Right.
and put your plastic tap in and hook it to the line. Is that correct?
That's right. You wouldn't from this. With this one, you would be gathering by hand, and you would just daily come up and empty out the sap, put it back on for the next day's run. Quite a job to clean up, washing the buckets and stack them, make sure they're dry. Well, we do it a lot easier now than was done many years ago. Then in the spring, you just reverse the procedure. Take off the bucket. Pull the spout, take it in for wash up, and you're all set.
Some people might wonder, Faye, if this hurts a tree or damages a tree.
No, not in any way. You drill in only so far, and each year as you do your drilling, you try and stay at least 6 inches away for your next hole. You wouldn't normally tap, we don't tap a tree unless it's maybe 12 to 14 inches chest high. This one we have drilled just to show people. In the orchard, we wouldn't drill anything this small for maple sap. And then as it gets every so many inches larger than a 14-inch tree, you could add an extra tap to it. We tried to limit ours this year to 4 taps to a tree, regardless of the size. If it were large enough for 4. We didn't go, we had some monstrous trees. Well, we wouldn't put 6 or 8 taps on it. We went just with 4.
Does the size of the tree determine how much sap you get out of it?
Well, there's a lot of speculation about that. A lot of people say if they put maybe 6 or 8 taps on a tree, they'll get that much more sap. And you might get some more, but we figure if you put 4 around there, you're going to catch about all you get out of it for sap.
Is there any rule of thumb how much sap a tree gives?
Well, they talk about, I believe it's a 1/4 tap that they talk about, of syrup, but I could be wrong on that. We'll ask Bert about that. He's more up on...
So you'd say 10 gallons per tap?
Of sap, possibly. We'll ask Bert about that. As I say, he's up on that. I'm only... that part of it, I leave to him.
It's kind of a silly question. What would happen to all the sap if it wasn't drained from the tree?
Well, a lot of it has to go. It goes from the roots, and it goes up and it feeds the tree. And that's before you get your buds open and so on. You're not going to get all of the sap. And if you don't take any, I suppose only a certain amount goes up to feed the tree anyways. And I'm sure there's no way you could drain it all. Your trees would die.
So you're not damaging the tree anyway?
No. Those trees will not be damaged by tapping. If you were to cut them down for lumber afterwards, there's no doubt you would see in there a little ways. You'd see maybe outside boards that would have spots on them. We haven't cut any down, so I don't know how that works. But I'm sure you would notice some of them.
You can see how hot this fire gets. This side is turning red. It's metal. We are back inside Sugarhouse. Gets very warm in here, doesn't it, Bert?
Sure does.
You never have to worry about being cold up here.
Those doors are cast iron. They're about a half an inch thick.
What Bert's referring to is these doors right here, cast iron, half-inch thick, he said. As you can see, they are getting warm, red. Haven't melted off though, have they, Bert?
No, they haven't. But they're always we try to keep it pretty hot. They're generally pretty red all the time.
How many years did it take to reach the expertise that you have, Bert?
Oh, well, I don't know. But I've been doing it 30 odd years.
So not anybody can just step in here and think they're going to make some maple syrup and have a quality product like you folks have.
Well, not the first year. So they learn how to boil and when it's ready. Of course, we're not as modern as some people because they have automatic draw-offs and that takes it off when it is served, which takes some of the knowledge out of it.
There's a lot of preparation prior to this time of year when you do start boiling. That involves getting your wood ready because this is a wood-fired evaporator. How much wood do you have to have for a season, Bert?
Well, we plan on at least 20 cords.
20 cord. That's a lot of work in itself. I cut wood and I realize that that's a lot of work. You must love it.
You have to like it to do it.
Yes, you do. Faye explained outside it's more like a hobby right at this point and not a money-making thing with all the work you put into it.
No, you wouldn't make much money on it.
Do you,
$2 an hour.
when do you string your lines, your plastic lines, and tap your trees?
Well, generally start about the 1st of March.
So you could be in deep snow doing that.
That's right. Sometimes 3 feet or better. Even this year, without much snow, I didn't think there was much. I went up when there was no snow, and I couldn't reach the tap. Some of them. So there must have been quite a bit of snow, more than I thought.
That's pretty time-consuming. How many trees did you tap this year?
We must have about 1,000 taps.
1,000 taps. That's a lot of work. And then you have to go around after the season and take them all out. Is that?
That's right. We take them all out, and then we have a machine that pumps water and air with a solution to clean the tubing. So when we take it down, we pump that solution through it to make sure that the tubes are all clean for next week.
Otherwise, the sap having sugar content in it would.
Oh yeah, it would be sticky and you know, probably with mold and that sort of thing. We didn't clean them out.
I know it's warm where I'm standing, and I can see the doors are red. Are we getting near ready to draw off some more? Or?
No, I don't think so. I think we got the fire once more.
We better check that for
Back over to Faye. She's busy canning. She has to get this canned before Bert starts and draws off some more syrup, or he won't have any place to put it.
Have to make sure that those seals snap in there good and tight. We do ship a lot of syrup, and you have to be real sure that those seals are in there. We can't tighten the covers on until it cools a bit. The seals are in tight, but the covers are supposed to be left ajar just a little bit. Yeah, I think we got a lot.
Oh yeah.
This is the top part of the evaporator. Again, where the sap comes in. This is where Bert's keen eye will watch progress, know when everything is ready to come off.
I'm going to shut off the preheat.
Yeah. You just let it run in cold.
Okay.
Want a glove?
Put it on bypass and you have cold sap coming into the evaporator.
What would be the reason for that, Bert?
Well, because I don't have much sap left out there, and if I cool it down in the back pan, I run less risk of burning the pans.
So we certainly want to thank you and Faye for the tour and all the information and the sweet smells we've gotten here today. It's a very nice operation you have.
Well, we appreciate you coming up here.
Well, we'll sign off for now and hopefully give the folks a view of what we've seen and hope that someday that they can come in person and view it. I'm sure you welcome people.
You're welcome.
Any person viewing this, feel free to contact Bert or Faye, and you're more than welcome to come and view the boil down process to making this sweet product.
Love to have them anytime.
Anytime, Faye said.